mentality to him.
He also built up slowly. Like, he took his time. Like, it's been a long time training for this fight.
Terence Crawford isn't slowing down one bit as he gears up for Canelo Alvarez. Day after day, he's pushing himself in the gym, grinding through tough sparring rounds, sharpening his timing, and keeping that slick movement polished. You can see the focus in his eyes. This isn't just another training camp, it's preparation for the biggest fight of his career.
So who do you like in Canelo versus Crawford?
Well, I'm a giant Crawford fan because I think he's the best switch hitter since Marvin Hagler. I also think Canelo is slowing down. And Canelo is more of a one-punch fighter now than the combination fighter he was when he was younger.
Do you think Terence Crawford can beat Canelo Alvarez?
Yeah, I think he can win.
Okay.
I don't know if he's going to win, but I think he can win. He's going to have to box a brilliant fight.
If Ray Leonard could beat Marvelous Marvin Hagler, then Terence Crawford can beat Canelo Alvarez. Why do you say that? Same equation. Get in, get out. Get in, get out. Yeah. Over and over and over. He's got to figure the angles and the approaches that will allow him to step in, land to the body, or occasionally upstairs, and then get out.
Crawford's training has caught the eye of a lot of people, and Joe Rogan happens to be one of them. When he talks about this fight, the first thing he points out is just how big of a move this is for Crawford. It's not just a jump in opponents, it's a serious leap in weight. Rogan makes it clear that going from welterweight all the way up to super middleweight is no easy task, and it adds a whole new layer of risk to the fight.
When you look at the elite of the elite boxers, to a man, to every one of them, they're disciplined. Yeah. And they stay focused. I'm so excited to see this fight with Canelo Alvarez because I think the Saudi Arabians have so much money. They're throwing so much money at boxing. And the guy who's the head of boxing over there wants to make that fight happen. I think Terence Crawford, forget about the 3 weight classes. I think he could beat Canelo.
I think he can too.
Interesting. I'll tell you that.
What do you think?
I don't know. You know, it's a big jump to go from 54, which was a step up from 47. Right,
now
so it goes to 54, and now
68.
he's going to 68. That's so much weight.
A lot of weight.
But at the same time, Rogan doesn't downplay what Crawford brings to the table. He describes Crawford as someone who has that rare ability to fight effectively from either stance, something you don't see very often at such a high level. He also highlights the fact that Crawford has that wrestler's mindset, the kind where discipline and grit are just part of who he is. That mentality, paired with how carefully he's paced himself over the years, shows why Rogan sees him as more than just another boxer moving up in weight.
Terence is, I think he's the best switch hitter since Hagler.
They claim Hagler was my favorite. They claim he's walking around like a $190 or something, and you do know he's a wrestler.
Yep.
So he's got that mentality.
Rogan also reminds people that this fight has been in Crawford's sights for a long time. Crawford was already talking about Alvarez over a year ago, and he's used every bit of time since then to bulk up, sharpen his skills, and prepare for the biggest challenge of his career. That kind of long-term focus makes the matchup even more intriguing because, you know, Crawford didn't just stumble into this opportunity, he's been shaping himself for it.
To him.
He also built up slowly. Like he took his time. Like it's been a long time training for this fight. He came on this podcast more than a year ago, and he was talking about that's the fight he wants.
Nice.
And that was a long time ago.
I remember.
So he's been trying to get that fight for a long time. So knowing after he beat Errol Spence that he wasn't ever going to fight at that weight again, and then going up and fighting.
But Rogan doesn't let the excitement completely overshadow the danger. He brings up just how sharp Canelo is, not only in power, but in the way he breaks opponents down. He mentions past fights where Canelo has inflicted real damage, almost as if to remind everyone that no matter how good Crawford looks, he's walking into the ring with a man who's proven he can end fights in brutal fashion.
Madrimov, and then knowing he's got like at least a year before he fights Alvarez. He got pretty big.
Yeah, I like him.
I'm leaning Bud. Yeah.
He's slick, man.
Yeah.
He's slick. He's super intelligent. Like he sets traps. He does stuff, and then there's a bunch of great breakdown videos of particularly the Errol Spence fight, like him setting traps. It's just he's a very high level guy, but Canelo is dangerous. He broke Billy Joe's song.
After hearing Rogan weigh in, the conversation naturally shifts to someone who knows the fight game from a trainer's perspective, Robert Garcia. He doesn't sugarcoat the challenge ahead for Crawford. On paper, Garcia leans toward Canelo. The size difference is hard to ignore, and with Canelo's power, he feels that if the Mexican star lands clean, Crawford could be in real trouble. For Garcia, this weight jump is more than just numbers. It's stepping into an arena where one punch can change everything.
We're about a week away now. We've seen training footage, we've seen sparring partners as well from either camps, but what do you think ahead of next week in the Allegiant Stadium?
Well, look, on paper, Canelo should win. Canelo's bigger and stronger, and if Canelo lands good punches, I think Canelo could hurt Crawford. Crawford's, first time in that division and jumping 2 divisions, where he only had one fight at 154 and didn't look his best either. So there's a lot of questions, about that. And that's why a lot of people think Canelo is going to knock out Crawford.
Still, Garcia doesn't write Crawford off. In fact, he's one of the few who openly says Crawford has a real shot. He talks about Crawford's speed, his ring IQ, and the way he adjusts mid-fight. Those traits in Garcia's eyes give him a path to victory. He sees a scenario where Crawford boxes carefully, controls the pace, and makes the right moves to edge out a decision.
But I'm probably one of the only ones that I do give Crawford a chance. I think Crawford could pull it off. Crawford is very talented. He's very fast. He's very smart in the ring. So I think a perfect fight, Crawford could pull off a...
Garcia also keeps it realistic. He admits he wouldn't bet money on Crawford, mainly because of the risk involved with facing someone as strong as Canelo. At the same time, he points to recent performances where Canelo has looked a bit flat and slow. If that version of Canelo shows up in Las Vegas, Garcia believes Crawford's style could expose it and turn the fight into something much closer than most expect. So while the majority might be predicting a knockout in Canelo's favor, Garcia leaves the door open for Crawford. It's not a prediction filled with certainty, but it's a reminder that in boxing, especially with a fighter as crafty as Crawford, nothing is guaranteed.
Decision.
Okay.
I think he could win a decision. I don't pick him. I wouldn't put my money on him winning because it's a very dangerous, risky fight, especially with Canelo being so strong. But Canelo's last few performances, he's looked slow, flat-footed, looking for one punch at a time. And if that's the Canelo that fights Crawford, Crawford could win a decision. Crawford could outbox him, could outsmart him, could land 3-4 punch combinations and move and win a decision. So do I give Crawford a chance? 100% think Crawford could pull it off. Would I put my money on it? Probably not. Yeah.
While many point out Crawford's age and the weight jump, Teddy Atlas doesn't see those as the deciding factors. Instead, he focuses on how sharp Crawford still looks. At 37, Atlas doesn't view him as worn out or past his prime. He explains that Crawford hasn't been through endless wars, hasn't taken the kind of punishment that usually ages fighters, and still carries the timing and legs to deal with a bigger opponent.
We know he's the smaller man. He's jumping up all the way to 168. And some are picking holes in his resume. What would you say to those naysayers?
I would say I love Crawford. I would say he passes the eye test. Yeah, I would say the resume is the resume. He passes the eye test. Everyone he's been in there, he's won. He's won convincingly. I know with the Matrimore fight, people want him to win big. It was his first time stepping up in weight to 154, and it was a guy with 300 amateur fights. Only had 10 pro fights, but he had 300 amateur fights, with the best international fighters in the world. And he had a very deliberate style, a very distinct style, a very awkward style in its own way.
Atlas also flips the usual narrative. Instead of worrying about Crawford being the one slowing down, he wonders if Canelo might be the fighter showing signs of wear. With over 60 fights on his record, Atlas hints that mileage could play a role. In his eyes, being a few years younger doesn't automatically make Canelo fresher. The number of battles and punches absorbed matter more than age, and that's where Atlas sees potential cracks.
Yeah, he's 37 years old. He's not used up. He hasn't been in a million wars. He takes care of himself. He lives the right life. He's a family man. I'm not concerned about that. I'm not saying it can't show up. You never know when Father Time's going to show up. But I'm not going in there saying I'm really worried about that. In some ways, I might say I'm more worried about Canelo getting old, even though he's a couple years younger. He's 3 years younger. I'd be more concerned about him getting old because he has had 67 or 66 fights, whatever that number is. I'd be more concerned about that because I don't judge, and the old timers didn't either, fighters chronologically as much as I do by the amount of fights they've had and the amount of punches they've taken. I judge them that way. I judge their age.
When talking about the matchup itself, Atlas highlights Crawford's strengths in ways that don't always show up on paper. He points to Crawford's fight IQ, his instincts, and his ability to adapt inside the ring. These are the traits that Atlas believes can neutralize Canelo's size and power. He stresses that resumes don't fight each other, fighters do, and in that ring, Crawford's intelligence and instincts could prove to be the difference.
The fighters are getting in there and fighting, not the resumes. I haven't seen a resume throw a jab yet. Have you, bud? You've been around with me your whole life. Have you seen a resume throw a jab? No, I don't think so. So everyone Crawford has been put in with, he's beaten. That I know. And I know the way he's beaten them. I know how smart he is. I know how talented he is. I know how special he is. That there are certain qualities he has that I'm banking on that are not the qualities that you can really put on paper. They're not the qualities that there's a real metric for, that is easy to identify, like I said, on paper. Oh, speed, power, elusiveness, legs. No, there's other talents, other qualities, and he has
Adam Smith, who has been around the sport for years, didn't just see this as another matchup. For him, it's one of those rare meetings between two fighters who bring curiosity and history into the ring. He looked at Canelo as the strong, experienced super middleweight who has been in more than enough big nights. At the same time, he pointed out that Crawford is still carrying that sense of being the man who has quietly stacked wins and titles, now stepping up to a moment that could truly define his career.
Boxing. I think Canelo is known. I think Canelo, obviously the Mexican machismo that holds all the super middleweight titles, nearly 70-odd fights. He's been phenomenal. I think he's 35 now. But for Terence Crawford, he has definitely gone under the radar. 4-weight world champion, 41-0, 31 knockouts. A southpaw who's got IQ and speed and...
The way Smith broke it down, the difference might come down to where both fighters stand right now. Canelo has the power and the size, but there's the lingering question of whether he has already peaked. Crawford, on the other hand, has the speed and craft, and that combination could be enough to trouble Canelo if things go his way. Smith even suggested that this fight could be Crawford's way of announcing himself to the wider world, especially with the spotlight of a massive global audience watching. It's not so much about proving he belongs, but about showing that his style and skill set can carry him even higher.
Craft. I think it's a fabulously interesting matchup, the two of them, because you've got the big guy, the strong super middleweight, really cultured, wonderful fighter in Canelo, but is he just slightly, ever so slightly, fine margins past his peak? And you've got Crawford, who needs this fight as his coming out party. The big news, it's on Netflix, so he'll get the attention. Can Crawford do it? It's a huge step again in weights, but I think he's got the speed, and I think he's got the know-how, I'm sure we'll talk about it more next week, to cause problems for Canelo, and I think that he could.
After Smith's breakdown came Eddie Hearn, and his take brought another angle to the table. For him, the most intriguing part is whether Crawford can really deal with the jump in weight. Going all the way up to 168 to face a natural super middleweight like Canelo is a whole different challenge. Hearn even remembered when Crawford fought at 154 and didn't exactly look the bigger guy back then, so now taking on someone who has spent years at this weight makes the size difference hard to ignore.
I guess the big conversation is how the weight will affect Bud and how he will respond to the size. You know, we got a situation where in Los Angeles, Crawford didn't look that big against the 154. In fact, I thought Madrimov looked the bigger, the stronger guy in that fight. I thought it was a very close fight, that fight. Now you're going up 2 divisions at 168 for Canelo Alvarez, who is, you know, a pound-for-pound legend of the sport. Against Skull, he didn't look great. You know, the movement didn't look great. I didn't think his legs looked fantastic.
But even with that concern, Hearn gave a lot of credit to Crawford's boxing brain. In his view, the way Crawford reads opponents, stays on his feet, and makes it hard for anyone to get clean shots could tilt the fight. He suggested that if Crawford sticks to that smart, slippery style, the fight may not be as straightforward as many expect.
And I think if Terence Crawford decides to box elusively in this fight, I think he's going to really have success. When he gets hit, that's really the $1 million question. How can he hang at 168? When you spend time with both of them, they're both so confident, you actually can't see him losing. Bud talks a brilliant game, and he's walked the walk continuously, and he has probably the best boxing.
Even while admitting that Canelo is still his guy, Hearn couldn't hide that he leans a little toward Crawford. It's not about raw power or size, but about who can win the small battles in the ring. He hinted that Crawford's ability to grab early rounds and use his movement could give him an edge, though he kept Canelo as the one walking in with the upper hand.
IQ in the game. I probably, and you know, Canelo's my guy, but I'll probably lean.
To explain his point further, Hearn brought up the Bivol fight. He reminded everyone how Bivol managed to frustrate Canelo by staying slick, piling on punches, and never letting him settle. That same type of plan, in Hearn's eyes, could be Crawford's best path to victory. Whether he can pull it off against such a seasoned champion is the big question. So that's where things stand. Canelo and Crawford are locked in for one of the biggest showdowns boxing has seen in years. The build-up has been wild, the camps are intense, and both sides believe they have the edge. When the bell rings, we will finally see whose game plan holds up under the lights. Let us know in the comments below, who do you think takes it, Canelo or Crawford?